Welcome to Mac Talk, a Middle Tennessee podcast from Mont Haven Arts and Cultural Center in Hendersonville, Tennessee. I'm your announcer, Kennedy Galpin. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Ponce Law. Ponce Law, justice for all.
Thank you, Kennedy, and welcome everyone to Mac Talk. I'm your host, John Pitcher. We like to think of the Mac as a cultural town square where we encourage everyone to be their creative best. And being your creative best includes attending live concerts and other events. In other words, get out there and do something. Now, Kennedy has been encouraging me to be more creative by introducing me to some of her favorite bands. And that got me wondering, Kennedy, I know you know your music. So what are some of your favorite places to hear live music right here in Music City?
Yeah, so right now, two of my favorite places. One of my favorite places has actually since been renovated since I've been, so I really need to go back. But it is Mercy Lounge.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
I have seen some good
it's now I think called Front Row. It's the Cannery Hall. And that was a fantastic place to see music. Just because it's not that big.
What have you seen there?
So Billy Block.
Okay.
He used to have a live show every week. I don't know how many times a week, but I would see his live show there a few times growing up because my family knew him because his sons played hockey with my brother. So my dad and I would go to his shows. I've seen Nothing Nowhere there. Just a few different shows. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's not a very big space, so it's kind of intimate.
Okay.
It's just fun. My other favorite place is the Basement East.
Oh,
because it's also pretty small.
Of course.
And it's great. Yeah. I mean, how could you not like the Basement East?
I have friends who perform there. So
how do you not like the Basement East? Yeah. I mean, it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would have to say my two favorite are slightly less intimate than those. One is probably the most famous place here in Nashville, and that's the Ryman Auditorium, which goes back to 1892 when it was known as the Union Gospel Tabernacle. But I've heard so many great shows there, and one of the most memorable being, I think it was about the last performance that Tony Bennett did there. I was one of the reviewers, and I actually got to go back and hang out with Tony Bennett. That was really cool. But I love Ryman. It's beautiful. Ryman. It has the history. It is amazing. And the other one is actually a newer facility. It is the Fisher Center for Performing Arts over at Belmont. I absolutely love that place. It's modeled after some of the great old opera houses of Europe. And I know I've heard some really great Nashville opera performances there recently. If you're going to do big European grand opera, I know the opera is doing the Puccini Girl of the Golden West there this coming January 22nd, 24th. I've heard them do Wagner's Das Rheingold there. But it is beautiful. The sight lines are all perfect. Yep. The acoustics are great.
Yep.
It is a nice place to be. Kudos to Belmont University for coming up with something that you wouldn't think is possible, which is really upping the ante in a place like Nashville and coming up with a great concert hall, the Fisher Center.
I can also attest to that. I saw the Dolly Parton stage play there.
Wow, that's right.
And it was fantastic.
Right. And you told me about that. Yeah. Very cool.
I've been to the Ryman many times as well to see Elvis Costello, Paramore, Elvis Costello again recently, many others. Also fantastic. Well,
speaking of live music, let's go ahead and introduce today's guests. Frances Perry and Patrick Dailey are musicians with the Nashville ensemble Early Music City. The group plays the music of Bach, Handel, and other Baroque composers the old-fashioned way, with lutes, valveless horns, gut-string violins, and other historically informed instruments. Early Music City has performed at the Nashville Public Library Courtyard Concert Series, the Boston Early Music Festival Fringe Concert Series, and here at Mont Haven Arts and Cultural Center, among other important venues. The group's annual Messiah Sing-Along takes place at 3:30 p.m. Sunday, November 16th, 2025, at Christ Church Cathedral in Nashville. We're excited these talented musicians are here. Frances Perry and Patrick Dailey, welcome to Mac Talk.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You guys have a Messiah sing-along coming up on November 16th, Sunday, November 16th at Christ Church Cathedral in November. I always think of this time of year for my Messiahs, and I've seen Messiahs just about everywhere. I've seen just about every kind of Messiah you can see, from the big Mormon tabernacle style Messiah to the period instrument Messiah to gospel inflected Messiahs. I've seen, and it works in every way because it's just sort of immortal music. It's just wonderful. The Messiah has been with us a long time. It premiered in Dublin in 1742, and it has been one of the longest running and enduring hits in the history of music. And Patrick, I thought I would start with you. You are our countertenor and also an opera singer and music professor. In your opinion, why has Messiah been so enduring? Why has it been so popular?
Oh, man. Messiah represents so many things to so many people, right? It represents, for those of particularly the Christian faith, it represents, of course, part one, the birth of Christ, the prophecy and birth of Christ, and then the two is the suffering and the death, and then part three, the resurrection and second coming, right? And so we have those things that people are responding to, but then further, it's also just good music. Yeah. It's very good music. It's the tunes, many of the tunes, particularly, of course, the famous Hallelujah chorus and other solos and arias, are very familiar. Mm-hmm. Now, when you start to go further into how it really reaches into various communities, because it is text and because of our Western world being so centered around Christianity, it's text that we're very familiar with. So people really respond to that, and you can feel that people put their own experiences into what they're hearing, their own life experiences, whether they are Christians or not. They're able to sort of gravitate to something that uplifts them and that gives them hope and that helps to sort of challenge them through their daily lives.
Wow. I think you really did hit upon something there, because, the great folk singer Pete Seeger used to talk to sometimes classical composers. And, classical composers would ask him, because having folk music in your classical music has always been sort of a popular way to compose. And they would ask him, are there any folk songs that you can think of that we should put in our classical pieces? And he would always stop and say, the most important thing you can do is to always emulate Johann Sebastian Bach and what he did. And they're kind of like, well, what did he do? And he says, well, he always put in those great Lutheran hymns to his piece that everybody knew how to sing. So if that music is already part of you, you're already going to love it.
Absolutely.
And there you go. We're talking about a scripture at this time that everybody really knew, and it resonated with them. One fascinating thing to me about Messiah is that when it was premiered, it was premiered really as an Easter piece, right? And mm-hmm. Now, and you think about the most important part of this was the third act, right? And now we always think of it as just the first act. Now it's become like a Christmas piece. So I guess that says something about the immortality of and versatility of this music.
Yeah, I think because of even how we're doing it, right? What we're doing is just going to do exactly that. We're doing that part one. Uh-huh. And people are going to be able to come sing part one, hear the story of part one. I think it's important as well in times of transition mm-hmm. and difficulty in our world and questions in our world, coming together to sing about something changing. It almost makes me think about West Side Story. Something's coming, right? Something could be, who knows? I feel something coming, and so it's coming together to sing about. Like this is going to happen, and there's going to be this, and all of these things will be made well, really is encouraging. And then for us all to sort of end the day with like, this will be well, like, mm-hmm. hallelujah, all is going to be well. Like, yes, yes, yes. It's a good point of affirmation that we really need today.
Wow. Well, Francis, let me ask you something. Early Music City is known as a historically informed ensemble, at least to a certain extent. What does that mean?
It means various things, to tell you the truth. As far as a lutenist myself, it depends on how far you want to go down, shall I say, the rabbit hole of early music.
Just a surfacey thing so that I can understand
things. Well, we're very fortunate that there are instrument makers all over the world who are making replicas of instruments from the time where the music came from, originated from, around the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries. And I have spoken to numerous instrument makers, and I'm always inspired and grateful for the amount of time they spend in museums in Europe and also at the Smithsonian to get detailed literally drawings of these instruments and making replicas. We're so fortunate, and that wasn't available until the last few decades anyway. So that is the
some of the point too is to try to discover that old sound world that Bach would have known, that even Beethoven would have known.
Absolutely.
But if you go back far enough, of course, the instruments were put together a little bit differently. I mean, your violins would have gut strings, right? Your horns might be valveless. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, the tuning might have been a little bit different as well. So you have a different sound. I mean, these guys would have heard something a little bit different from what we hear today. And one thing, my instrument's the piano, one thing that always sort of gets to me is that Beethoven discovered this little thing called the metronome. And he has on some of these metronome markings, and I'm like, that's not possible, but of course he was playing a different instrument. He's playing a forte piano. It had a slightly different action and a different sound. Does that, having that instrument at your fingertips, so to speak, does it help inform how you play the music?
Absolutely. The articulation is different, and as a singer, the articulation, to use that word, is different. And we have these treatises that tell us about expression, and basically we are, to sum it up, as you said, in terms of an overall view, we're trying to simulate as much as possible what it might have sounded like in the time when this music originated. That's kind of the historically inspired, as we say.
That's interesting. Well, I remember trying to learn the slow movement of Bach's Italian Concerto once. That's the slow movement, so you think it's the easy one. And I always had piano teachers just shaking their heads at me saying, no, that's not it. No, that's not it. And I couldn't figure it out. And I go back and listen to my Glenn Gould recordings of it. And of course, he's not going to inform you on what Bach sounded like. And then one wonderful concert, I went to a historic concert, and someone was playing on a dual manual harpsichord and played that piece. And all of a sudden I was like, oh yeah, there you go. Now I totally understand what all these mean piano teachers could never explain to me, because I just simply heard what Bach had in mind. And it totally changed the way I played that piece. Totally changed the way I played that piece. I actually got to play it right. So I can see that there are a lot of advantages to that approach to music.
Right. And also it's rhetorical, and it's meant to move people. And no matter what you're doing, I don't care what pitch you're at, I don't care if you're using a modern instrument or a replica, we're going to look to move people with this music. I'm thinking of a concert that Patrick and I participated in out of town. And I will say that it was very long, and it was somewhat lugubrious, shall we say?
Oh, lugubrious. That's one of my favorite words.
Patrick and I were walking up to the stage, and there were various people that came from different locations. And I said to him, let's try to wake this audience up. And we were doing a piece of 16th century Italian music, and I think it was one of the most memorable performances we did.
Absolutely.
And we have to keep that in mind, because you can be as academically accurate and immersed as you want to be, but if you're not moving the audience, I think you're missing the point.
Yeah, no, and I used to be a music critic up in Eastman in Rochester, New York, and I covered the Eastman School, where there was a doctoral student there named Chris Bezadenhout, who's gone on to become really the world's foremost forte pianist, and which was the instrument that Mozart had, that Beethoven had. And, it's really changed the way a lot of people play Mozart now if you play him on his instrument, because if you try to play Mozart on a 9-foot-long Steinway concert grand with an iron frame, and you try to, it just overwhelms the music. And so what a lot of modern pianists would do is they would pull back, and it gave Mozart performances a sort of, Vienna chocolate sort of music box character to it. It was, really much more restrained. The big Russian pianists would have to really pull back and restrain themselves. Whereas Mozart was a crazy improviser, and he jammed. And, these guys on a forte piano, you can play Mozart, you can jam and be hyper emotional, which I think is maybe a little bit more of what he had in mind. Of course, he also improvised. So it's a very different approach to music. I mean, you're changing. All of a sudden, you're like a jazz player, So, well, Patrick, let me ask you, as an opera singer, you are a countertenor. Tell us what a countertenor is, and why is that particular voice so important to early music?
Certainly. So a countertenor is essentially a male singer who sings in the register of a soprano, mezzo-soprano, alto voice. So the higher end. So it is using, essentially thinking about it as using the falsetto as the core instrument. In that regard. There was a practice back in that day of Handel and all that they did to young men, prepubescent young men, to ensure that they kept those high voices. I'm not sure if people can go and look that up if they feel so inclined.
Oh, we can talk about it. It's called castration.
They did that thing
and
there.
One of the biggest stars in the world at the time was a guy named Farinelli.
Yep.
And he was a castrato.
Yeah,
I think actually one of them lived into the age of the earliest recordings.
Yes, we
actually have a recording of a castrato.
We have one of, I want to say, Borshi is his name. But there was Farinelli, there was Senesario, there were so many, and they were the superstars.
Well, they had these magnificent soprano voices, but the power of men.
Absolutely.
And in that pre-electronic day, wow, that would have just blown. You'd have to go watch some sci-fi movie like The Fifth Element to see something equivalent to that.
That's essentially what people were experiencing, and they were just, like, as has been said, they were the superstars. They were like, if you're talking Beyonce, Taylor Swift, they are in that realm in terms of
they were the most famous. They were huge draws.
They were huge, and so. As time went on, of course, that practice goes out. However, Handel is also spending a lot of time in London. He's the composer, probably the primary composer for the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden, and those churches and those choirs there have very well developed men and boys choirs as well. So what you start seeing is, over time, the castrato tradition goes away, but you still have these males who are singing in alto, and of course, young boys singing soprano, which was very common. Of course, Bach had that happen as well. So
we come up to the days of Benjamin Britten,
and we come to the days of Benjamin Britten, and we keep going. And so there was a resurgence. Really, I think Britten was a part of that.
Right.
In many respects, this resurgence of bringing countertenors into the parlance and a popular sort of popularity of classical music, because that had been sort of taken away. In fact, in a lot of those Handel operas, it was nothing to actually have those sung by baritones and tenors, as opposed to being sung by countertenors. And then you had mezzos and sopranos singing those male roles. Right. And so now Britten helps to bring this back in. And so now we're seeing countertenors show up in the lead roles of Handel and singing the alto and sometimes soprano solos in the great oratorios and concert works.
Well, I mean, I've heard even with Messiah, the great mezzo aria, He Was Despised, I have heard that done by countertenors.
Yeah. I do it very regularly. Every Messiah, I've been the alto soloist,
right.
And so I sing "But Who May Abide," "O Thou," he was despised, he shall feed his flock. Thou art gone up on high. If the alto sings it, I'm singing it.
Right.
And so that's and then even I did a Mozart Requiem earlier this year where I was the alto soloist as well. So there is a lot involved in terms of what is available for a countertenor now, as well as a lot of modern music, 21st century music, and things that are being premiered. There are things that have been written for me that I've premiered over the last couple of decades. So it's been a really good ride.
And I guess the early music movement helps bring that voice back, right? Because among other things, your forces are different. If you get to the late 19th century, early 20th century, you have all of these opera singers who are trying to sing Wagner, or they're trying to sing Strauss, and you need, for those roles, you need the Helden tenor, you need the dramatic soprano, the Hildegard Behrens type who can sing over a giant Wagner orchestra. But with the countertenor, working with, a smaller force of historic instruments, you can soar over that.
Oh yeah, it's so it
really shimmers over
it
that.
Really, there is a thing I know with a lot of these ensembles. Like I sing with a lot of professional groups now, more and more, and they like having countertenors, a couple of them in the alto section, just because we help to cut the sound differently, and help to anchor the sound in a certain type of way. And so you meld that with beautiful, rich, like female alto voices, or even sometimes having to sing second soprano and help to bring some clarity to that sound. It really makes the sound of the ensemble, or even the piece that is being done, it, as Francis has said, it helps to move people differently,
right?
And brings a different type of emotional response.
Okay, we're speaking with Francis Perry and Patrick Dailey from the group Early Music City. We'll be back after this important message.
Ponce Law proudly supports art education through our partnership with the Mont Haven Arts and Cultural Center. Together, we provide students with access to tools, training, and opportunities to explore their creativity. By investing in the arts, we're helping inspire brighter futures and strengthening communities across Tennessee. Creativity matters, justice matters. For more information about Ponce Law, check out their website at poncelaw.com.
We're back with Early Music City musicians, Francis Perry and Patrick Dailey, who are here to talk with us about the group's upcoming Messiah Sing-Along at 3:30 p.m. Sunday, November 16, 2025. Well, one thing that is really striking about Handel's Messiah is that it's a very operatic piece. In a lot of ways, it reminds me a little bit more of just staged opera as opposed to a sacred choral piece. And even, I believe, it's scored in acts. It's very much like an opera. And you have soloists, just like you would with an opera. And Francis, I'm wondering, how does the sing-along part work? Because here all of a sudden, rather than just having, all of these great trained professional singers, now all of a sudden we have something that's more akin to a congregation, right? How does the sing-along part work?
I've told many people this, and they've all agreed with me. And here's what it is. In this town, there are so many professional singers that I don't care what genre it is, but if the performer on the stage says, everybody join in, it sounds like a celestial choir.
Yeah, that's also a hard part in Nashville for those of us who don't necessarily sing like that, is that you just don't fit in.
Well, we're checking IDs at that.
That's right.
No, I'm kidding.
Check, where did you go to school? Do you have your Bachelor of Music yet? Well, but I mean, it's sort of an interesting thing because it's a very, very operatic piece. And so, I mean, and obviously there are solos that you're not going to be singing with, but tell us a little bit about how the whole sing-along part works.
Well, I will also defer to Patrick because he's working with the singers, and I'm lining up you could.
Yeah, but you're like this big instrumentalist guy, so.
Well, the thing is that. How does it work? Basically, the sing-along is on the choruses, and then we have, I do want Patrick to talk about the soloists because that's another unique aspect of this, but we're calling it a chamber orchestra. We have 4 violins and 2 violas and 1 cello, and then I'm playing lute or English theorbo, and that'll be based or reinforcing the bass, harpsichord. We have orchestral bass, player, and so the idea is that we're going to have clarity that way in terms of the accompaniment. So,
okay.
But I feel like since I attended a performance of a sing-along Messiah 20 years ago, and I just thought it was great. And we have the opportunity, since Patrick and I co-founded Early Music City in 2019. I always wanted to put on a program like this, and then COVID hit, but we did it in 2021 and 2022. So this is the third time we're doing it, and we're very excited to be doing it at Christ Church Cathedral. This will be the first time we're doing it there. So I'm going to defer, while we're on the subject right now, I'm going to let Patrick talk about the soloists.
Well, let me ask you a few things then, Patrick. Sure. I have a couple of things I want to talk to you about. Would like you to talk about your conductor. I'd like you to talk about your soloist, and also talk to me a little bit about how this performance is being arranged, because Messiah is a very, very long piece.
Yes.
It's rarely performed in its entirety in a performance setting. They're usually cuts. So tell me about this performance. What are we going to hear?
Certainly.
Conductor, soloist, cuts, whatever.
Awesome. So in regards to our conductor, we are so excited to have one of my dear friends, colleagues, and one of the foremost, I would consider one of the foremost musicians, conductors, up and coming conductors, choral conductors, and bass baritones. By the name of Dr. Marcus Jarrell Ruff. Dr. Ruff, for a number of years, sang with Chanticleer, and he also is with groups like Seraphic Fire. In fact, he and I are going to be in Cleveland together doing Apollo's
these are all
Fire.
the really big.
These are the big groups.
Big period groups.
Yeah, so he's
been recording for decades.
Absolutely. Now. So I know he's with Seraphic, he's with Exigence, he's with oh my goodness, Santa Fe Desert Chorale.
So if we come to this, we're going to learn something.
Absolutely. You have. And then I think what's also unique with Marcus in particular, coming out, although he is from the Northeast, from Connecticut, and an African-American man who grew up in the Pentecostal church, out of the Church of God in Christ. And so there is this understanding. I think that one of my friends, another foremost countertenor, Reggie Mobley, would say, early music is about a revolution. And so there is sort of this, what we're really hoping to bring is this tie of the tradition of the historical performance of Messiah, tied along with how it speaks to the prophetic tradition of the Black church, as well as how it ties into sort of our greater communal and world understanding, musically and socially, right? And so having Marcus there is a really key piece of that, because he knows those worlds so well. Then we talk about our soloist, as I've mentioned, or I had not mentioned actually at this point, but there is a long tradition of Handel's Messiah in many historic African-American churches. In Washington, D.C., at Metropolitan Baptist Church, and AME Church, Shiloh in D.C., Abyssinian Baptist Church in New York, churches in Chicago, Third Baptist in San Francisco, the oldest Black church west of the Mississippi.
I have actually heard gospel arrangements of Messiah, and it works.
And they are, like I do in Chicago. I have done for the last few years a piece that was commissioned by commissioned by Marin Alsop, called Too Hot to Handle. And so I've been doing that for the last few years, which is the gospel jazz Messiah. Then there's also Handel's Messiah Soulful Celebration that was produced and worked on by Mervyn Warren and Quincy Jones, right? So you have all of these pieces that have tied in. There's another one, Young Messiah. So you have all these pieces that have sort of rearranged Messiah. What we're doing is taking the original and just implanting the spirits of the Black church and the spirit of these various communities into it, which I have I'm fortunate to have experienced, but my first Messiahs were in churches, those historic Black churches that have been doing them for centuries by that time. So we will have a cast of 4 singers, of course, who are African American. Siren Hightower, soprano, Nicole Simone, mezzo soprano, Vincent Davis, tenor, and Alan J. Christian, bass baritone. 3 of the 4 singers are HBCU graduates. 2 of them, Nicole and Alan, are both alum of the Fifth Jubilee Singers. So we're excited to have this particular cast. And I believe it's probably the only African-American cast of Messiah in Middle Tennessee, possibly in the state.
Well, and thank you for mentioning the Fifth Jubilee Singers, because we're sometimes under the mistaken impression that we're called Music City here because of the Grand Ole Opry, and we're not.
Right.
We are called Music City because Queen Victoria got to hear the Fifth Jubilee Singers in London.
Absolutely.
And when she found out where they were from, she said, wow, that must be a really musical city.
And we have that portrait.
And that's where that's our tradition.
That is our tradition, and I love that.
And I love how this Messiah is going to tie into our early music Nashville tradition. How incredible. I love that so much.
And I think, too, what's also to be mentioned as well is that when the Jubilee Singers started, they actually started as a group, as a general choral group that was singing Mozart, Palestrina, Handel.
Right.
So before they started singing the concert spiritual and developing the concert spiritual chorally, they were actually singing more of this music. So it's really going to be great to have these
And they were singing
singers.
that music sometimes in a place that was called the Union Tabernacle, the Union Gospel Tabernacle, which is now known as Ryman Auditorium.
Yeah, so that's really a beautiful tradition and tie. And then lastly, I will say, in terms of how we will navigate for these choruses, what's beautiful is not only do we have a sing-along, the full programming is called the Music City Oratorio Festival. And so people are invited on Saturday, November 15th to come to Tennessee State University, to our Performing Arts Center, where they will have clinics and workshops on Handel's Messiah, where they can be familiar with those choruses. And then there's going to be, in the middle of the day, a lunch and learn, where we will have a conversation around Handel's Messiah, around Handel, around the impact of the work, have some good food. And then finally, at the end of that day, come together, work with Dr. Ruff to learn the performance practices of early music and of the Black church tradition. And then finally come together and resound our voices in rich joy and revelry in the sing-along of Handel's Messiah. So people are able to just show up on Sunday. If they know it, show up. Register, of course, because we want to make sure we can fit you and have a score for you if you need it. But then also people who want to learn more can come on Saturday and be a part of the full Music City Oratorio Festival.
Right. We're speaking with Francis Perry and Patrick Dailey from the group Early Music City. We'll be back after this important message.
Ponce Law is honored to champion art education alongside the Monthaven Arts and Cultural Center. Through this partnership, we help young artists gain the resources, guidance, and inspiration they need to develop their talents. Supporting the arts empowers the next generation and enriches communities throughout Tennessee. Creativity and justice go hand in hand. Ponce Law, justice for all. Learn more at poncelaw.com.
We're back with Early Music City musicians, Francis Perry and Patrick Dailey, who are here to talk with us about the group's upcoming Messiah Sing-Along at 3:30 p.m. Sunday, November 16, 2025. Well, this is actually for both of you. What are some of your favorite highlights of Messiah? I can tell you mine right off the bat, and I've already sort of alluded to it, which is that wonderful aria, He Was Despised. Because if there's ever a place in music where time actually stops, it's right there. What are your highlights, Francis? What is your favorite part, or your favorite aria, your favorite chorus in Messiah? What is it that just makes this piece resonate with you?
I'm going to go in another direction because I'm immersed in preparing my part.
Okay.
And the PIFA is really nice.
Oh, okay. No, I totally got that.
Again, this wonderful flow of time to reflect where the orchestra is playing, and then we're discussing the version of He Shall Feed His Flock, and Patrick has decided on the version that we see where it changes keys, and we have two different singers. He can be more specific about it, but the way that I have found it works with the other two times that we did it is that I just come in when the second singer comes in, and we have this little change of mood to it and feel, and certainly sound and key. So I will say that, and then of course, what can I say? Hallelujah chorus.
Of course.
I look forward to it so much.
Of course. So, and it's going to be so much fun because it's a sing-along.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a blast. Well, how about you, Patrick?
Oh man. Okay. I'm gonna try to distill this right. But my favorite chorus is probably "And He Shall Purify." That's probably my favorite chorus.
Oh yes.
I love singing that. I love how you can articulate it in different ways. So
it has those accents in it.
And I love those accents and kind of, and we're moving that body, moving that voice and those voices with other voices is so much fun. But there are some moments that I do have that are my favorites. Francis mentioned that duet of He Shall Feed His Flock and To Come Unto Him. I can break down every single time. Again, I'm a church boy. I'm from Nashville. I'm a church boy. So when after He shall feed his flock like a shepherd and carry them in his bosom, and then you hear that soprano, and I melt. And because I just melt every single time, and I'm crying, and I'm usually swaying, and I just can't take it, and I'm about to speak in tongues, and I'm a Baptist, and so that's not something the Baptists do, but I feel it so much. And then another moment, sort of to the point that you made earlier of He Was Despised in part 2, when you now have to go through where you have those three choruses back to back. So after singing He Was Despised, and putting that experience of the suffering of Christ and something that so many of us can identify with in terms of how we feel like we have been despised and rejected, but still doing right. Then you have to come back and sing, and with His stripes we are healed. And all of those three choruses back to back. I'm usually again a mess. And the last one I will say is the duet between the tenor and the alto of "Oh Death, Where Is Thy Sting." But then you go into "But Thanks Be to God," that chorus. It's again, the church boy in me just can't help it. It's like, and I love the way it is really situated so well, so perfectly situated in terms of its storytelling and in terms of its approach. How you go from these sentiments and threading. Yeah, I love it.
Wow. Well, Francis, one of the downsides of this not being a video podcast, I guess the upside of it not being a video podcast is that the listeners don't have to look at me. But on the other hand, we don't get to see your lute, which is an amazing, amazing instrument. Could you talk to us a little bit about your instrument and why this is so important in the early music ensemble world?
Sure. Well, there are various kinds of lutes, and I like to say that there are many paintings of lutes throughout 15th, 16th, 17th century art. And there's usually one of two scenarios. There are angels playing lutes.
Yeah.
And there's also someone holding a lute and tuning it, which is, what we usually find ourselves doing on the lute because there's so many strings.
Yeah.
I'm playing one with 14 strings.
Okay.
And it's single strung. And that's the characteristic of one that you would use for ensemble music. Lots of times for solo music, you have instruments, lutes that are double strung, like a 12-string guitar, even with octaves on the lower strings. So the thing is that has a particular sound, and that's used for earlier vocal music and for solo music. And then around 1600, the early Baroque music, the clarity of the single-strung lute was really one of the preferred instruments for accompanying voice. that's what I think of when I think of a lute from that time. Basically,
it's kind of like a harpsichord you could carry around in a way, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you can play, harmonies and accompaniment and melody and just the whole piece.
Yes, actually, I had one person at a concert quite a few years ago say that I was sitting too close to the harpsichord because they couldn't tell the difference in the sound between when the harpsichord played and when I played, which is why we're putting the harpsichord on the other side of the setup here for this concert. So
they sound different, though. Yeah, they're different.
They do sound different.
They're different. Give me a break.
Well, that person didn't know what they were talking
about.
I know.
That's what struck me. I was like, you go back to school, dude.
Exactly. So it was really in Italy around 1600, the birth of what we call the Baroque era. This was the instrument because you could play loud, you could play soft. We don't say that harpsichordists can't play loud and soft, but they have to do it with how many notes they play at one time, not with the subtlety of.
And so in that respect, it is a little harpsichord-like.
Yeah.
But I use that qualifier there.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So I'll be playing an instrument that I call an English theorbo because it's in English theorbo tuning, and we don't need to go too far down there.
Well, tell me who the maker was. I mean, you didn't pick this up at Walmart, right? So
no.
Somebody makes these things for you guys, you virtuosos.
Lawrence K. Brown, wonderful maker, made it in Asheville, North Carolina, as a matter of fact. Yep.
Okay, mm-hmm. Asheville.
And again, we're
another incredible crafty town.
Exactly. So as I say, I'm always grateful for the instrument makers who dedicate their lives to learning about these instruments.
Okay. This is for either of you, whoever wants to pick this one up, but I know that early music city is often referred to as sort of early music 2.0. What does that mean?
That means we get to the heart of the matter. We want to move audiences. We're all well trained in the academic side of things, but we really want to move audiences and bring this sound and just the spirit of this music to our audiences. That's pretty much what it is. We bring the music to other audiences. For young people, we've done it. We like playing at the downtown Nashville Library. We were on their wonderful Courtyard concert series, and most of the time they have non-classical music, and we feel that this music deserves to be heard by a wider audience than usually what comes. All credit to what goes on at universities, but we want to reach out beyond that.
Okay. We're speaking with Francis Perry and Patrick Dailey from the group Early Music City. We'll be back after this important message.
Ponce Law proudly supports art education through our partnership with the Mont Haven Arts and Cultural Center. Together, we provide students with access to tools, training, and opportunities to explore their creativity. By investing in the arts, we're helping inspire brighter futures and strengthening communities across Tennessee. Creativity matters, justice matters. For more information about Ponce Law, check out their website at poncelaw.com.
We're back with Early Music City musicians, Francis Perry and Patrick Dailey, who are here to talk with us about the group's upcoming Messiah Sing-Along at 3:30 p.m. Sunday, November 16, 2025. Just a few more. I appreciate you guys coming on short notice and spending so much time with us. I had just a few more questions.
Please.
This question, the answer that I have might seem a little bit heretical to a couple of period instrument musicians, but I'm wondering if you guys have a favorite recording of Messiah, and mine actually is a little bit more local-ish, regional-ish. It's Robert Shaw conducting the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. I love his Messiah with Sylvia McNair. That's just always been a really close one to me. Do you guys have a favorite recording of Messiah? Patrick's laughing. So
I'm laughing.
I'm thinking he's got a devious one.
I don't think to me, it's not super devious. Again, having sung it, I've done it in the period way at 4:15 and all of those types of things. I love it. Great. But one of my absolute favorite recordings, and it's primarily because of the singers, because they're some of my favorite singers. It is, I want to say it's Toronto Symphony with Kathleen Battle, Florence Quivar, John Eiler, and I think it was Sam Raimi as the bass.
What a lineup.
And that lineup is spectacular. And it's something about hearing, because Miss Battle, and I've had the pleasure and the honor of working with her and knowing her. Miss Battle is very, very astute and clear about style. Mm-hmm. But also like me, she's a church kid from Ohio. And so though she understands the Baroque style and all, there's a way that she sort of lends herself to the spirit of the text that Miss Quivar also does, that John taps into, that Sam taps into. And I had the pleasure also of knowing John Eiler because I went to Morgan State in Baltimore. Uh-huh. And so, of course, he was at University of Maryland. So I did know him for a number of years. But yeah, like hearing them, especially when Miss Battle sings, "I know that my Redeemer liveth," and she gets to, "And though worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God," and I break. I'm actually getting chills right now.
That's what Messiah is all about, right? That's why we're still listening to it.
That's why we're still listening to it. So that's really the piece for me because of particularly how the soloists interpret the text. I think that's really what early music, as I said, is about, is how the revelatory nature of pulling everything that you can out of the text to make it so vivid. That's really what should be happening. And so they do such an incredible job with that in that recording.
Wow.
I'm going to make a slight pivot and talk about my favorite live performance, which featured my colleague Patrick here and Mary Wilson of Memphis with the Nashville Symphony, which I had the honor of attending.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, quite not too many years ago.
2022. That was my Nashville Symphony debut.
Yeah. Okay. That was just fantastic. That was a performance that was memorable for me.
Okay. Well, thank you for bringing that up. Well, just one last thing. What do you hope our sing-along audiences take from this performance? What do you hope they get out of it?
In my mind, I'm just imagining what it's going to sound like with this celestial choir, tell you the truth. And just, it's one thing, so many times we're listening to recordings or TV or whatever, but there's nothing like the spirit in the room when this is happening. So, and in that beautiful space, I just hope that it uplifts the spirits.
Okay.
As you said, Early Music City and groups like ours, we are quote unquote historically informed. And I hope that not only in being historically informed by the music and by the styles, by the treatises, by the text and the things about and how to interpret it. I hope that we are historically informed by those who have gone on before us, who have lived through various times and have left us this great tradition and these great traditions of music, of storytelling, of art, and of how art can really drive and aid in the well-being and betterment of society. So I hope that people leave informed and inspired by yes, the history of the music, but also by the history and the present moment to sort of be better and be well citizens of our community and of our world.
Okay. Early Music City has its Sing-Along Messiah coming up on Sunday, November 16th at 3:30 p.m. at Christ Church Cathedral. Is there a charge? Is there a donation? What's the box?
Yes. If you visit www.earlymusiccity.org, And you just go on there and click on the bar that says Music City Oratorio Festival. You will see all of the information about the festival, including the registration dates and the registration requirements and fees. There are student rates available. We have options available for people who only want to come to the sing-along on Sunday. We have registration options available for people who do the entire festival. And then, as I said, that there are student rates. And so you'll be directed to a registration site to fill out all the information. Let us know if you need a score or have any sort of accessibility needs, dietary issues for Saturday, things of that nature. So everything is on earlymusiccity.org.
Okay. And I will put a link to that on our blog at our monthavenarts.org. Patrick Dailey and Francis Perry, thank you for joining Mac Talk.
Our pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's been a joy.
You've been listening to Mac Talk from Mont Haven Arts and Cultural Center. Our mission is to educate, elevate, and encourage our community through the transformative power of the arts. If you're interested in transforming your creative life, check out our website at monthavenarts.org. Our guests today were Francis Perry and Patrick Dailey of the ensemble Early Music City. The group will be performing its annual Messiah Sing-Along at 3:30 p.m. Sunday, November 16th, 2025 at Christ Church Cathedral in Nashville. Our podcast music was written by Nashville composer Christina Spinay. I'm Kennedy Galpin. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.